everybody. It's great to see you today. I love this. Sean Senejan, who's our creative director, is actually running this for us. And what I love about Sean is he told me, okay, I'm recording it, stop swearing. Okay, great. So we're going to act professional. So Nancy, Michael, Julie, Lindsay, Dawn, Michelle, Cindy, Mary, Nancy. Oh my God, I love this. Lisa, Island Girl, love that. And Terry, you have adorable little children. So I love to see you guys all here. We have 200 and I don't know, 75, whatever, people registered for this, and we'll probably end up with about 80 people showing up. But you guys that show up, we really want to hear from you. So if you would move your mouse, go to the bottom of your screen, to the left of the green share screen button is the chat box. And I want you to click on it, please. It'll open it up. Tell me your first name, tell me where you're from. So go for it. And just so you all know, you are able to put in any question along the way. We want to hear from you. We know you've got questions you want to know about. Donna's from Houston, Florida, Nebraska. We've got Mundelein. We've got Eden Prairie, Minnesota. Hi, Rocky. I love it. Rocky's from California. I've got someone from Philadelphia, originally Peru. So this is cool. We have people from all over. And I've got a wonderful cast of characters tonight. They are characters. I've got Dr. Greg Sharloff. He's been featured on ABC, CBS, and Fox. We just call him Dr. Greg. And he fixed his hair for us tonight. So we're thrilled about that after he finished his dinner. We were warming up. we all get to ask him what he ate. That's going to be the fun part. He is one of the leading experts in health and wellness. He's a physician, author, and an anti-aging coach for retired athletes. He's soon to be my best friend. I'm really thrilled. And middle-aged professionals. Yay. He's the author of Why Doctors Skip Breakfast, Wellness Tips to Reverse Aging, Treat Depression, and Get a Good Night's Sleep. And he's also the co-founder of the Women's Sports Forum. So go Dr. Greg. We're very excited to have him here. And Dr. Sam Davis, she's a former collegiate athlete and doctor of physical therapy. She's passionate about helping others achieve optimal health. And she's also got this great little, is it a berry? Is it a fruit, Dr. Sam?
It's a hybrid between a grape and a berry.
It's a hybrid, and it's really cool. She's going to talk about that. She has a degree in biology, 10 years experience in physical therapy. She is certified in selective function movement assessment. She's also certified in functional movement screening, instrument assisted soft tissue mobilization, and therapeutic cupping. I don't know what else she doesn't do. So she's also the co-owner of Shape Enterprises, and my favorite, she is certified, she's a certified extreme hip hop master trainer. That's what I love. I'm going to put that on your name tag. You know, it's like 10 years as a bio whatever mechanism. This is what she does. Okay. Amanda Fear-Hiley. She's an RDN, an LD, a CPT. She is a registered dietitian with over 20 years in the industry. She's also immersed in the fitness field for over 15 years. She owns her own consulting business where she empowers her clients of all ages to improve their health through nutrition and movement. In particular, she incorporates food as fuel. I love that. Food as medicine and mindful eating approaches. And I was really interested in this, in gut health, because it's like a word that people just kind of, sorry to use this pun, but they vomit out there like gut health, gut health. And I asked Dr. Sam if she would give me the elevator pitch, which means you just have from floor 1 to maybe floor 5, explain what gut health is.
Awesome. Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for inviting me to this webinar, and I'm excited to share with all of our guests. But, you know, gut health is a big hot topic. It's actually a very complex topic, and literally scientists is really just scratching the surface of what gut health really all entails. But when you think about it, there are 100 trillion bacteria that live on our bodies and within our bodies. And they basically, you'll hear microbiome versus microbiota. So just to kind of break it down, your microbiota is all of the bacteria that's in your body. When you think about your microbiome or your gut microbiome, kind of go into gut health, you think about an ecosystem more so. Like your body is the whole globe, but you have ecosystems in which your bacteria collect in certain areas of your body. So your throat, your oral cavity, your skin, but the main, where all the bacteria really lies in your gut. A lot of your bacteria is in your large intestines, and we human cells, we have a symbiotic and a mutual relationship with these bacteria. These are basically your friendly bacteria that you need. They need us and we need them. So they're very important in overall health.
So I've heard, that was perfect. That took me maybe to floor 6, but that was perfect. So we've got good bacteria and bad bacteria. So Dr. Greg, talk to us about the good and the bad, how we balance this, and how we kind of probably need the good and the bad.
So it turns out we have billions or even trillions of different bacteria in our intestines. And there's not only sheer number of bacteria, there's also different types of bacteria. There's all kinds of different types. And so in our intestines, we have a mixture of all these different types of bacteria. And so it turns out that some of these bacteria are kind of good for us. They give us more energy. They put us in a better mood. They help us digest our food better. They help prevent disease. And then some of them are bad bacteria. They cause inflammation. They sap our energy. They make us feel sick. They actually make us sick. And then on top of that, there's also this idea of diversity of bacteria. It turns out that it's better if you have a diverse collection of a whole bunch of different types of bacteria. So one of the things I think we'll talk about today, which is important, is the types of bacteria you have, whether they're good or bad, and the diversity of bacteria you have are things that we actually have a lot of control over. We have a lot of control over them by the foods we eat. We have a lot of control over them by our activity level. We even have control over them based on how much sleep we get. So there's a lot of things that we could do that could really influence how healthy the bacteria are in our intestines.
And Amanda, what do you recommend to your clients to help get them back into balance? Like, I really like, before we turn the camera on, you were chatting about some of the ways we could replace some of the poor choices with better choices.
Absolutely, yes. So as our society turns towards convenience foods, which means something processed, something with a package, something with a label, something that can live on the shelf for years, preservatives, artificial flavors, all those sweeteners or lots of sugar, those foods kind of create the negative environment in your biota, in your microbiome. So that will cause the inflammation, the illness, the lethargy, all those things. And so depending on where you're at, if that's your main stay of your diet, choose maybe 2 of those to toss and replace them with a real food. So getting back to the basics of food that looks like food. So something that you could pick off of a tree or pick out of the ground, like an apple or a potato versus that apple fritter or those French fries, right? Your body wants to work and digest and get all the nutrients out of a real piece of food, because it almost, you're almost telling your immune system to react. And like, what is this bright orange dye number, whatever, that it's a foreign substance. And then it's this cascade of, oh, I don't feel good. My performance is suffering. I'm not sleeping well. My digestion is off. So little by little, you start converting back to like what you could buy at a farmer's market, right? Something that I'd say to my kids, if you can wash it, then maybe you should eat it, right? And so if you think about the foods you can wash in general, that's a good start.
And okay, now here's another question that I didn't ask and isn't part of this. What about the raw vegetables and the raw fruit versus the cooked alternatives?
So I'll go now. Let Greg go. Quick, you want Greg to go? You can go.
No, Amanda, please share, okay. And then I'll throw it over to the big guy.
So fiber, dietary fiber is the part of a plant that you cannot break down. So it's the cellulose and it's the outside of that apple skin. It's the oats. It's stuff you can see. It's actually not altered when you cook. So if you like a cooked carrot versus a raw carrot, go for it. It's just, you still want a fruit or a vegetable or a whole grain. Those are your dietary fiber sources. And that is what the good bacteria love to feed off of. It's this awesome environment for it. Their fiber, we could talk about for, hours, but I won't. So yeah, cooked raw, any way you want to get them in is fantastic.
Excellent. Dr. Greg?
So it's actually, I love talking about this. This is kind of fun. It turns out it's complicated. Yeah. First of all, some things are actually better raw and some things are better cooked. Certain foods are difficult for your body to absorb, like carrots, for example. So a cooked carrot might actually be superior to a raw carrot because you might actually absorb it better. And for people with certain intestinal conditions, it may be hard to eat a lot of raw vegetables, whereas when you cook them, they can be easier to eat. But the flip side of the coin is certain cooking methods actually cause your food to lose nutrients. So for example, if you steam something, if you boil it, what often happens is a lot of those nutrients get lost in the water, So I like to steam cauliflower. I like the way that tastes. But then you've got all this water in the bottom of your pot. I feed that water to my plants, and I find that the plants like it. But all the stuff that I'm giving to my plants, I'm not getting because I steamed it out into the water. So I think it depends on what you're doing, but probably at the end of the day, you should do whatever will cause you to eat the food. If you only like steamed cauliflower, you don't like raw, steam it. Like that's what I do. But the one other thing I want to add to this is, and this is something people don't talk about a lot, is the form that the thing comes in also influences what bacteria eat it. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. Say you have oats. We all agree, oats are good, they're healthy, they're great, they've got fiber, they've got protein, they've got everything. If you have steel cut oats or those thick oats that are, the kind of meaty oats, you eat those, they're really good for you because they take a while to digest. They sit in your intestines for a while, and your good bacteria, they feast on those things. It's like a meal. It's like a buffet for your good bacteria.
So
if you eat the same, what's that?
I was just going to say, so steel cut oats go on the right side of the column.
Yes.
Right. That's the good side. Okay.
But if you have a Cheerios, and those are just oats, they don't really add anything to it, but they're really, really ultra processed. And the way they're processed, it breaks it down. Its structure is totally different. And so your body digests Cheerios in a snap. And so even though Cheerios are oats and steel cut oats are oats, your body handles those two things differently. And you're better off with the steel cut oats than the Cheerios.
Oh, interesting. And we got a great question that said, it was from Diana, and she's on her iPhone. So Diana says, what about fermented foods? So Dr. Sam, what do you think about the fermented foods?
So when you think about fermented foods, you're actually thinking about probiotics. So I know that probiotics, prebiotics are a hot topic, but your probiotics, when you break down the word pro meaning for, biotic meaning life, basically that's for life. They're actually living microorganisms that you can get into your system to help with the good bacteria. So, there's fermented foods like yogurt, cheese, sauerkraut, pickles. There's all types of things that can actually help in helping with your good bacteria. And, that's been shown to be beneficial to your bacteria.
Oh, that's great. All right. Good to know. And now you've got to make sure, Dr. Sam, I'm pronouncing this correctly. What is gut microbiota, right? Biota.
Yeah.
Whatever. And why is it so important?
So that kind of just goes back to all of the organisms that live in us and around us and within us that, Dr. Greg mentioned. We have trillions of different bacteria, but there's mainly in our gut is our gut microbiome, where you'll find different species. There's over 1,000 species of your types of bacteria, and most of them are in your gut, but there's two main kind of, categories where they have your Bacteroidetes. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. And there's another one that is your Firmicutes. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing those right, but they're basically the main abundancy of the bacteria in your gut. And they really have a lot of different roles. A big role in the bacteria in your gut is fermentation. That's breaking down those non-digestible carbohydrates that the body can't break down, needs to get to our gut where it will feed the good bacteria. And a lot of times the issue is where we have that Western diet that we don't feed our good bacteria. So what they're going to do is not live the way they need to live. So the good bacteria go down, your bad bacteria go up. You have what we call a dysbiotic gut, which is mainly a dysfunctional gut that's not aiding in the optimal health that you need it to aid in, decreases the diversity of the gut, which we all, there's research that shows, like Dr. Greg says, diversity is extremely important in an overall healthy gut. That decreases the energy in which your intestinal lining has, which then decreases the linkages in which the intestinal walls have. And then we have that thing called leaky gut. And people have heard of that form.
What is leaky gut?
So basically when, you know, your gut microbiome is not doing what it needs to do, your intestines lose that linkage between the intestinal wall, and it allows those like nasty toxins to actually enter your bloodstream, which then can cause a widespread of inflammation within the body. So people start to have, you know, cramps, abdominal pain, things of that nature. Because
we were talking, I think it was Dr. Greg, you were talking a little bit about like diverticulosis and irritable bowel syndrome and some of the negative effects of not having that balance in the gut. Are there non-chemical ways to deal with it? Are there natural ways we can deal with these types of conditions?
Absolutely.
Greg,
yeah.
Did you hear me?
I thought
yeah, sorry, I wasn't sure you were asking. Well, absolutely. So one of the best things is to kind of think what our ancestors did. You know, our ancestors, they were out in nature, they were touching things, you know, they were touching dirt and plants and trees. And so they were exposing themselves to a variety of microorganisms. You know, we don't play in the dirt so much. You know, I've got kids, they're 8. I have to twist their arm to get them to go outside. You know, it used to be, my memory of it is I was always outside. I have to force them outside because it's dirty. And so people were just not in the dirt as much as we used to, you know, plants, leaves, everything else. In terms of food, the best thing we could do is you want to eat a variety of foods, not just one thing, but a variety of things. And ideally, like we were saying, you want whole plant-based foods. So vegetables, leafy greens, onion, garlic, and fruits like bananas and apples and things like that. And that will increase the diversity of your gut microbiome.
Interesting. We got a question. This is the longest question, honestly, I've ever seen in the history of the over 100 webinars we've done since March 24th, 2020. Okay, question. Can you explain the difference between the 2 different categories of good bacteria? Here's the quote. We even have a quote. Okay, it is now well established that a healthy gut flora is largely responsible for overall health of the host. The normal human gut microbiota compromises of 2 major, oh my goodness, where's the question? All right, major concern. I think what they're asking about is, what do you think about like antibiotics and things like that have infiltrated our society that are affecting the bacteria? Amanda, you're nodding, and I'm sure you've got comments on this.
Yes, and I am not a physician, and if your physician says you have a bacterial overgrowth that needs an antibiotic to take care of it, absolutely. But then you have to think that it's like any other medicine. It's going to take care of the bad bacteria, but it's also going to wipe out the good. So first and foremost, take the medication as indicated. Just don't ask for antibiotic, just, helter skelter. And then it's back to rebuilding. Like they've done studies when I used to work in the clinical setting in the hospital, when people had the bacterial overgrowth and they were on antibiotic after antibiotic, we would actually give them the probiotics in the hospital to establish their gut flora. There's something, I don't know why this popped into my head, and I'm sorry, maybe if you don't like medical stuff, but where they do like a fecal implant, right? To give these folks the good bacteria that they were missing. So it hasn't been said, and I remember reading it. It's cool. Like they're thinking this is like a new organ, like 2 to 5 pounds of this awesome flora in your gut. And when an antibiotic, you know, what's the side effect of an antibiotic? Diarrhea. You're not eating well. You're sick already, and so all that flushes it out. So rebuild, restart. You know, a probiotic orally versus just food. I'm always food first, but I live in the real world, and if you want to explore an actual pill. This research, the science behind it is all over the place. Like you could talk CFUs, colony forming units, right? You can talk how many billions of these units do you need? How many strains do you need? They've changed the guidelines. When I first learned it, it was 15,000 CFUs and it was one strain, like Lactobacillus acidophilus. Those were like the Bifidobacterium, right? Those were like the 3 big ones. And now we want 5 strains in a pill. So we think, and how many units? Well, it depends on the strength and how good is the probiotic. Should it be in the fridge? I mean, there's so many things. So that's why I say food first. And if that's not working, you feel like you just can't pick it up with the diet, then yeah, you can absolutely do a probiotic as an adjunct, as an additional. It's like taking a multivitamin. It's not going to fix a bad diet, right? But it can be an addition to it. And so I think it's just really working with your healthcare provider and really eyeballing what you're doing and what your current scenario is. You know, if it's IBS, right, and you've had to cut out a ton of foods because you've had the bloating and the diarrhea and all those things, then, you know, then you need to work with someone on, well, how can I still get a good, well-balanced diet to, I guess, reset your immune system, right? This is all about decreasing inflammation and building. You have like 70% of your immunity in your gut, right? All those IgG and IgA cells, IgM, all these proteins that are like, hey, I'm going to help you out. And then we're slamming it with illness and antibiotics and preservative foods. So the short answer, what do? Go back to the basics, start eating just a good, clean diet. There is some good research, and Dr. Greg would love this, right? On eating more vegetarian, makes sense, more fiber, more whole foods that give you a good gut flora. So there's lots of layering steps to say, okay, good, I'm feeling good again. I've rebuilt the good bacteria.
And all right, I'm going to ask this again. What about with the steel cut oats? Okay, I always take one thing away from a webinar, and I have a feeling already this is all right. Dr. Sam got me drinking almond milks. Now I'm going to be eating almond milk with steel cut oats. Do I cook it? Do I eat it raw and throw it in one of my little shakes that I make, or what do you recommend?
You have to cook it. You have to, the steel cut oats, you really, I would cook them. Like I said, cooking itself isn't evil. And something like grains, like steel cut oats or even wheat, things, rice, you have to cook them. Otherwise you just don't absorb them properly. But I really think you could eat things like steel cut oats and not feel guilty about it. Here's the way to look at it. Steel cut, if you've ever seen them, they're like these blobs, but they're chewy. They're like these chewy bits. You could almost think of them. If you chew, have you ever chewed an almond and you get like chunks of almond in your mouth? Steel cut oats is the same thing. You've got these like bits. And no matter how good a chewer you are, and I'm not a great chewer, you know, I just like to be done with my food and move on to something else. But no matter how good of a chewer you are, you're going to swallow all these bits. And so we have gas. Good. And so what happens is these bits kind of pass through you and they go in your intestines. And then these bits can stick around for a while, and then the bacteria in your intestines.
Hold on 1 second, please. Sean, do you know where that sound is coming from?
Yeah, I'm trying to target it right now, Sarah.
Okay, all right. Dr. Greg, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So these bits that, you know, no matter how well you chew, you're just going to swallow these chunks. It's just the way it is. And so those things, they go through your stomach largely unmolested, and then they get in your intestines, and then it gives the bacteria that are there, the good bacteria, a feast. It's got all kinds of different fiber and nutrients and stuff. And so you absorb some of it, but the bacteria absorb some of it too, and you're sharing. When you have, you know, things you absorb quickly, like let's say a soda.
Yeah. Or let's say red wine. All right.
Well, anything that's a sort of a simple sugar base, you'll absorb that quickly. And so what happens is it doesn't really make its way down your intestines too far because you're so good at absorbing. If I give you a Coke, you will absorb that so quickly. Your body's really good at absorbing that. And so it doesn't make its way into most of the intestines. Most of the bacteria aren't fed. And the ones that are, that eat sugar, those are the bad bacteria anyways. But with steel cut oats, it encourages good bacteria and encourages throughout your whole intestine, which is great.
Interesting. Well, I kind of made a joke, but Deborah asked a question. What about, first of all, she said, what about Snickers? And I really enjoy that question. But then she said, kidding, but where does chocolate and red wine fit in? You know, we always hear, oh, those are antioxidants.
Mm-hmm. And there actually has been research. Yeah, there's been research on polyphenols, the polyphenols and the phytochemicals that are associated with things like nuts, seeds, and berries have been linked to being part of that prebiotic, kind of helping feed your gut bacteria. So actually dark chocolate has been researched as one of those type of kind of prebiotics to help feed gut bacteria. But polyphenols and one grape is really a hybrid between a grape and a berry. And I know Sarah mentioned that before about the muscadine. A lot of individuals don't know about this undiscovered superfruit, but it has so many powerful antioxidants and polyphenols that can help, with a good diversity of your microbiome in your gut and in the biome in your gut. And those are some researches, articles out there that have linked that when you increase those polyphenols, that will help feed those good bacteria. Also, the muscadine extract, a lot of times the people don't realize the seed and the skin of the muscadine are where all the polyphenols are, all the nutritional value. So there's something we call the MGE extract, where they actually extract the powerfulness of those polyphenols, and that's been linked to helping with the diversity of your microbiome.
Interesting. And we did get, Heidi asked a question, so pretty much any kind of fiber in your diet will feed the good bacteria. I find that interesting because I think before we turned the camera on, I was like, what about, I eat Raisin Bran every morning. And Amanda like fell off her chair and was crying, screaming, sugar, sugar, sugar. No, but I have bran buds, lower in sugar, and I add fresh, are raisins fresh? Are there any such things as fresh raisins? Anyway, I do, real raisins in there without the sugar coating and stuff like that. Is any kind of fiber in your diet good? Is all fiber good? No. Sam, go ahead.
Like anything, all fiber isn't treated the same. So there are good fibers, and there actually are fibers that your body doesn't really digest as well. So you definitely want those soluble fibers, the ones that you find in the fruits and vegetables. So there are definitely different types. And when you use those more soluble fibers that are in our fruits and vegetables, that can help decrease hunger, can help decrease cortisol levels, which we mentioned, stress being a trigger to having a negative effect on our microbiome and our gut health. So there are definitely some differences between fibers. So all fiber isn't treated the same.
Very cool. Amanda?
Totally agree in terms of the microbiome, but you don't want to discount soluble versus insoluble. The soluble is what we're talking about for it's actually, when you look at that oat, it's that little gel that like would swell up on the oats that we've been, yay, oats. But the insoluble is the brush for the colon, like get rid of colon, like toxins and colon cancer, decreases other health risks. So both fibers are needed. But when we're talking about gut health, we prefer soluble. Like, how do you know? I mean, just eat a fruit, vegetable, whole grain to start with. Once again, you can get really nitty gritty about it, but fiber is in general terms a good thing. Excess fiber over like 50 grams a day total will start to help you, or like you won't absorb your nutrients, right? Because it's too much and it starts to take things with it. But in general, most people don't get in that much.
No. Okay, Dr. Greg.
One thing I just would add to this is there's a lot of people, and in fact, a physician friend of mine does this, and I think he's crazy. People think they can make up for a bad diet by having, say, a bunch of Metamucil something like that, right? Because that's a fiber powder. You just get it, put it in a jar and you just add fiber and you mix it with water and drink it. And it's true that things like Metamucil will help get you regular, right? There's no question about that. But it doesn't really help develop good bacteria in your intestines, because some fibers are fermentable, meaning that the intestinal bacteria will feast on them and eat them, which is the point of this. And some are really not. And so the fiber that's in Metamucil is not fermentable easily by the bacteria that we have in our intestines. So yes, Metamucil will help you poop, but it doesn't actually make the bacteria in your gut healthier, as opposed to eating broccoli or something, which will also help you poop, but will help the bacteria in your intestines along the way.
Oh, interesting. And we had another question about let me read it. It's the Fodma Diet that somebody used. Liz used it to help reset her gut. Have any of you heard about that, Amanda?
Yeah, FODMAP, fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides, all these fermentable carbohydrates that we've been talking about fermentation. So typically, that diet was developed for people with IBS. And so we used to just do like low residue and let's cut things out and see what the triggers are. And then we learned about FODMAPs. And so you go through all the different food groups, and these foods that are high in these fermentable carbohydrates are cut out for 6 weeks, and hopefully you decrease symptoms. And then you get to start to add them back in so that you're not eating a bare bones diet in hopes of figuring out what your trigger foods are. So you add back in one food after 6 weeks, wait a couple days, see how you do, et cetera, and add it back on. But yeah, as like a reset, I've used it clinically for someone who doesn't have IBS, who were like, wow, they're just having all the bloating and the diarrhea or the constipation, just the unhealthy gut, and we can't seem to figure out what the triggers are. It's restrictive, but I think knowing that typically the way it's set up is about 6 weeks of elimination, and then you get to add back in is it's absolutely an okay way to go.
And what are your thoughts on like a dairy-free diet or a gluten-free diet? What is it? I know you're smiling because you obviously have been reading too many People magazine articles, but what are your thoughts on that, Amanda?
Out of the gate, I am okay with both of those foods, with gluten and with dairy. Yes, they have been shown to be inflammatory. Not everybody sitting on this panel, or how many folks are here with us today, they do not cause an inflammation for everybody. A flip side of that, absolutely. Someone has gas with dairy, or my joints are achy, I feel swollen every time I eat dairy. Well, then it sounds like that food absolutely causes inflammation in your body. Same thing with gluten. Gluten's a protein in wheat. It's actually cut out initially on that FODMAP diet. So it does have a certain form of, that fermentable carbohydrate. Same thing with the dairy. So we know that in people with sensitive guts or even leaky guts, these are problematic foods. I just caution like cutting everything out at once, right? Without really thinking about what you're doing. Because I know I feel better. Well, I just cut out 20 foods. Which food was it? So that's my recommendation.
That's interesting because I used to get migraines a lot, especially when I was in law school. I was getting a lot of migraines. And so they kind of cut all these things out that supposedly are migraine triggers. And I was just terrified that it was going to be chocolate, and it wasn't. But it ended up being like champagne and red wine. So it was like, well, that life sucks. But they slowly fed it back in. And I'm going to go back here a little bit. Dr. Greg, you talked, it was interesting. You talked about we don't eat dirt. We don't play in dirt. We don't expose ourselves to enough. I wonder what is going to happen to the generation for the past almost 2 years that have been wearing masks, kept inside, away from other children. I have four kids. I have a 30-year-old, 28-year-old, 26, 24-year-old. I think I've had every disease in my house, from one to the other to the other. They're pretty robust adults right now. And I worry about the kids. I worry about, what's going to happen. What do you think about that?
Well, it's an interesting question, and it's something I know people are going to look at, because how often in our lifetimes have we had a situation where people are avoiding each other this much and they're wearing masks and everything. And we know that to some degree it's cutting down on disease transmission now. Like last year, the flu season was really, really mild. Like almost nobody had the flu. I mean, it was practically zero significant flu cases, which is like mind blowing. And that's because people weren't going out, they weren't around each other, they were wearing masks, we were distancing, you know. And so, so the question is, when we're not exposed to this that much, is there a long-term consequence? And we don't know, but I will tell you that there is research that when kids get all these stupid little colds that kids get, these little runny noses and rhinoviruses and everything else, as preschoolers, they are less likely to develop asthma as they get older. And so we think that at least for young kids, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old kids, exposure to these different germs and viruses, even the mildly bad ones, are good because they teach your immune system how to work properly and to not overreact to stuff they shouldn't be overreacting to. And so kids in daycare, a lot of times they get colds, they annoy us. You know, my kids were in daycare the other day, they, like you said, they were sick, it's a problem. But God willing, they're going to be less likely to get asthma as they get older because their immune systems hopefully will work better.
And I think that's something that we have to concern ourselves with and think about. We did, let me look here. I'm going to look here real quick. We did get an interesting question. Diana actually says she really shops the outside of the food store to get the freshest vegetables. Like, I think that means going, you know, to outdoor markets or eating what's in season. What do you guys think of like shopping at a typical grocery store, like a Jewel or a Sam's Club or something like that, versus going to Whole Foods? Is there a big difference in buying organic versus buying something that has had, you know, chemical alterations? Sam, Dr. Sam?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of studies, research that, you know, when we have a lot of herbicides and pesticides and GMOs and things of that nature that hit our food sources, they have a negative effect on our gut health versus something that is, you know, organic or something that is pure, 100% potent. It's in its natural state is going to be more beneficial to our gut. Like ginger, that's a natural source of something that really helps with digestion, nausea, but all ginger isn't treated the same. There's some, you know, the ginger is only as potent and pure as the soil in which it's grown. So there's definitely pluses when you're getting your vegetables and things of that nature in a soil that's nutrient rich versus depleted. And also soils that have a lot of herbicides in them definitely have toxins and free radicals that damage healthy tissues. So for sure, where you get your vegetables, it does have a point in that. And also turmeric, that's another one that is very researched to help with natural inflammation. But all turmeric or turmeric, whichever way you like to pronounce it, it's all of it's not treated the same. And it really depends on the soil in which it's grown.
And we did get a question. I'm not sure, maybe Amanda, you can address this. I know it's getting us a little bit off the topic, but how do you feel that intermittent fasting will affect our gut health? You got it. Everyone's going to bring it up. And I'm so embarrassed. I'm like, I have to keep my voice down. My husband is doing this now. So like we used to lay in bed and watch Downton Abbey. Oh, don't give me that thumbs up, Greg. We used to lay in bed and watch Downton Abbey and have a big bowl of popcorn. Okay, it was like, you know, we wouldn't put as much salt, with no butter, you know, no butter on it, whatever oil. And now it's like after 8 o'clock, I'm not allowed to have the popcorn. Anyway, sharing a little too much, but please, Amanda.
I do, and I don't remember the exact research, but I'm pretty darn sure, and I know Dr. Greg's going to say yes, that there's research that shows intermittent fasting will increase the healthy gut flora. And so, you know me, I'm like Miss Moderation. So if it's something that speaks to you and you're doing it and your husband loves it and doesn't miss the popcorn, and it's, you know, you're doing it to bring down your fasting insulin levels, or you've lost weight, or it's improved your athletic performance, go for it. It's not the only way to improve gut health. So I think you just have to look at the big picture and say, okay, maybe I'm going to go for organic foods and do that, you know, the dirty dozen list or the clean 15, right, to start. So what's really high in pesticides? Cut those out first. Or you know what? I've been wanting to do intermittent fasting. It might help my gut flora. Let's go for it. So I personally don't start with that as like the #1 recommendation in terms of a lifestyle, because it's tricky. But different seminars that we've done, it doesn't have to be like a 6-hour window of eating, right? You can do 12 and 12, which is, you know, 12 hours of eating and 12 hours of not eating, which is pretty normal. And then get yourself into it. So if it's something that speaks to you and you want to try it, it's absolutely has some really good health benefits. It's not the end all be all, but it's definitely a option.
Okay, so now we had the point. Now we're going to have the counterpoint. Okay, Greg.
So I'm a big fan of intermittent fasting. In fact, that's what my book, shameless plug, Why Doctors Skip Breakfast. It's all about, well, a lot of it is about fasting. And I'll tell you, how many of us poop in the middle of the night? Like, how many of us poop at 2 in the morning or midnight? Like, hardly anyone, right? It's just not, unless you're sick, you ate something bad, you just don't go. Like, you go at certain times of the day. And, you go at certain times of the day. And the reason for that is that our intestines have their own clocks. And our bodies have clocks. And this is actually kind of recent stuff, and it's pretty exciting. But what we're finding is that so many of our different cells and organ systems, they've got their own clock and their own schedule. They've got times that they do their work, and they've got times that they repair themselves. And so if you're eating a big meal, let's say at 10 p.m., 11 p.m., and you go to sleep, that stuff is sitting in your intestines, rotting away, just hanging out, festering in your intestines, doing nothing and not really moving. And that isn't what you want. You know, that isn't good for you. It's not good for the stuff you're eating. And so for a number of reasons, intermittent fasting has a lot of benefits. Like you were talking about, you might lower your fasting insulin level. It probably lowers your fasting blood sugar level. It most likely helps with your gut microbiome, but it also just sort of makes sense in terms of how your body operates, that we do things on cycles. Just like if you look at bright light late at night, it's not good for you. Eating a lot of food late at night isn't good for you either.
Oh my God, I'm watching Downton Abbey and I'm eating popcorn. I'm yeah, throw in a glass of red wine and we got a whole lot of trouble. I'm gonna ask you guys, I can't believe this. We're like oh, there goes my computer. Oh my goodness, sorry about that. 6:43. So we're getting rounding up here. I want a real quick best recommendation to keep a well-balanced gut flora. Dr. Sam, I'm going to start with you.
So definitely a wide variety of fruits and vegetables. It's all about diversity. Diversity is key in your healthy gut. Also, exercise has been linked to a healthy gut. There was a study, we were mentioning earlier, that they looked at women, 32 women, and they looked at their fecal sample before a 6-week program of exercise, endurance, aerobic exercise, looked at their fecal sample after that 6 weeks, and they can see a shift in a more diverse microbiome, a healthier gut. And then they actually asked those people, same sample, to stop exercising and go back to being sedentary, looked at their fecal sample, and they seen that it could revert back to what it was before they exercised. So definitely, exercising, increasing the variety of vegetables, and then also thinking about different polyphenols. Like I said, the muscadine grape/berry is a phenomenal source of polyphenols to really help with feeding the good bacteria. It's all about figuring out what's going to feed your good bacteria and, decrease the bad bacteria.
That's great. That's great. Amanda?
Yeah, I think we've talked a lot about similar topics. So something that hasn't been mentioned, I don't think, and since most of our population are athletes or people who like to be physically fit, we want to decrease inflammation in the body, right? That's already known. So we know exercise helps to do that. We know that that improves your gut flora. We also now know that certain bacteria are produced when you exercise that helps to your muscles to recover quicker and to get rid of that lactic acid, that soreness. So it's this awesome cycle of I'm going to exercise, I'm going to improve my gut flora, I'm going to feel better, I'm going to exercise more. There's also some really cool studies on different bacteria that's produced when you exercise that helps with hydration status and helps with the electrolyte balance so that you're not getting the muscle cramps, the sodium, the potassium going back and forth. So preaching to the choir, but it's to really, maybe you're talking to your clients about why to exercise. We want a healthy gut. It's a huge organ and it's going to decrease inflammation and boost your immunity and help you perform better.
Great. And Dr. Greg, we're almost out of time.
Well, so I would say, other than what's been mentioned, for food, I'm a big fan of a whole food, plant-based diet, which, it's a big topic. You'll probably have to, Google it, look it up and see. But the idea is, like was mentioned before, you want to eat plant-based things and unprocessed foods as much as possible. So whole grains, whole vegetables, whole fruits, things like that. The more of those you eat and the bigger diversity of those, the better. The second thing, which we haven't talked about too much, but is actually important for this, is sleep. If you're not getting enough sleep or you're having crummy sleep, like maybe you're a shift worker or you have a very disorganized sleep schedule, that seems to hurt your gut health and hurt the bacteria in your gut. So proper sleep in addition to what everybody else said.
Great. Thank you, guys. So we have our certification smash coming up this weekend. You get these all-day workshops. We have a couple on nutrition, so be sure to check them out. I thank you all for joining me. I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Sara Kooperman. I'm the CEO of SCW up here. I want to thank you, Dr. Sam, for joining us. Thank you, Amanda, so much for coming. And Dr. Greg, a pleasure to watch you eat dinner before the webinar came on. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Sean, and everybody. Have a good night. Take care.